I see a red light. I'm on the air. Hi, boys and girls. It's me, Butch. My name is Terry David Silvercloud. I'm 74 years old. I try to stay fit, but I have severe arthritis. So I heard a lot. I'm not your average old dude. I'm pretty reclusive. I don't own a smartphone. I don't text. I don't do social media. So if you want to do me a favor and you find this video that's to follow interesting, please post a link to it and get some views. I discovered in my old age that even if I want to save the world, no matter how rich I was, I couldn't do it all by myself. So I just do what I can, and this is part of it. I'm trying to pass on some of my weird knowledge to people. I'm a physicist at heart, a scientist. Scientists are detectives, especially theoretical ones. And no clue is to be ignored or to be thought of as being too silly. So I have a wide base of experience in my life, and I'm always looking for connections of one thing to another, be they just some weird coincidence or not. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't mean something. Maybe everything I'm about to tell you, you may say, is BS. In this day of fake news, I recommend you check out everything I say. I encourage you to check old Butchie Poo out. I'm telling you what I know. And so today, I've been meaning for a while to talk about shapes and whether or not they are significant as ancient symbols, and then to teach you a bit about shapes. I should have rehearsed this, but I wouldn't have remembered anyway. And I had a bit of pot a while ago to get myself comfortably numb, so I wander anyway. I'm a bit of a Sheldon Cooper type. So in my life, I wrote a book about 15 years ago, and I did a lot of research, and because I'm into physics, I noticed one thing and another, and the gist of the book at the time was a really cliche sort of storyline of spacemen being responsible for causing humans or upgrading them or something. And a really easy place to begin is the book of Genesis. It basically is a spaceman story of sons of God, whoever they are, the spacemen finding the local inhabitants who were already here. If you read your Genesis, they really enjoyed bonking them. They were great sex. And then there was the whole Adam and Eve story. So that's like a good space type story. But in doing a book, you do a whole lot of research. And I was thinking that if space people had come down and died off, maybe they were a crashed spaceship. I have a theory about all planets eventually being crushed in the center of the galaxy anyway, and if any civilizations arise, their job will be to send ships to the outer edge of the galaxy where new planets are forming. Have I lost you yet? Jeez, I go on. So in my research, I came across some really interesting things, and they relate to physics, and the physics in which I am interested is at the dark matter, dark energy level of things. And dark matter is not dark, it's just so tiny, it's basically translucent to light is one way of looking at it. It's just not, it's just too small. I don't want to get into all that, but my interest is in really small physics, and I'm not a quantum physicist, I'm a particle physicist. And quantum physicists, they don't much care about things any smaller than the electron as far as shape goes, and don't even much care about the shape at that level either. So it's people who smash atoms together. We're the kind of folk who have interest in things that occupy space, you know, that take up space, just like this is my phone. Where am I going with all this? So my interest is in how the universe is constructed, and I was thinking that space people would surely have tried to leave some kind of symbols behind if they were here in the past, knowing they were going to croak anyway, to maybe teach us something. And that's when I discovered the Kaaba. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly for those who speak Arabic. But the Kaaba, see, I wander so much, I sort of made myself a little crib list of what I'm supposed to be talking about. So in my research, I discovered the Kaaba, which in English has a few spellings, but the Kaaba is in Mecca, and some people think Kaaba means cube, but that's not correct. It just is cube shape. And being a cube, that is what interested me. But so I'm going to be talking more about shapes than history, but the interesting thing about the Kaaba is we don't really know how old it is. But we do know a few things about it. We know it was there when Muhammad was born, because he grew up there. He was an orphan. He was orphaned around age 4, and his uncle was the caretaker of the Kaaba. So the stone structure that is there now in Mecca, around which Muslims try to get to once in their life and walk around, is still there, but it's been rebuilt several times, and one time was during the lifetime of Muhammad. So we have stories of that, but it was there before Muhammad, the stone structure. But when exactly did that happen? And in Islamic culture, that was the Garden of Eden, and it was built, the original whatever was there was built by Adam and Eve. But the Quran suggests and says, here in the Quran, this is a Quran, an English translation by Dawood, I can't remember who did it. Let's not get into that. It's an English translation. Abraham and Ishmael built the house and dedicated it, saying, "Accept this from us, Lord. You are the one that hears all and knows all. Lord, make us submissive to you." Yak, 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 yak. So Abraham and Ishmael built the house in 127, and we know that in another reference in the Islamic tradition, there's in the book of Abraham, Abraham's talking to God. He says, "Lord, I have settled some of my offspring in a barren valley near your sacred house." So even though Abraham and Ishmael may have built the first stone version, and we can't be sure, that's a big undertaking. It's a very large structure. It's bigger than 30 feet by 30. The interior is roughly 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet, and it has meter thick granite walls. The inner part of the Kaaba is lined with marble. So the inner part of the Kaaba, which I'm going to get to, is about 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet. From the outside, it looks taller than a cube, and that's because during one of the rebuilds it was raised 4 or 5 feet up off the ground to prevent damage from water in that area of the world. If you had a flash flood before modern times, there were no water controls in that area, and if you get a sudden downpour in dry land, water just washes on through. So anyhow, what's interesting here is that the Kaaba, in its present form back to at least the time of Muhammad, was what it is now, a stone cube-shaped structure, the interior of which, even through all the rebuildings, is approximately 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet, even though the exterior is a bit bigger to allow for the stone structure itself. And it's aligned with the pointy parts, north, south, east, west. And the interesting part about that is that 66 feet to the east, it's actually been relocated about 100 years ago. They dug down, there was a natural well, and that well is recorded in Genesis. Did I mark it? It's probably too stupid to mark. Oh, that's my bookmark fell out. I had it, but in Genesis, you'll be familiar with the story of Abraham and bearing children when he was really old, Isaac and Ishmael. And Ishmael was the bastard son by his slave, his wife's servant. So Hagar, the slave girl, she was sort of abandoned in a barren valley. This isn't another story, but it's the same valley, we can assume. And she opened her eyes, and there was this well, which today is the same well, Zamzam. So there's different stories of Ishmael kicking his heel into the sand, and up sprang Zamzam, where the angel Gabriel blasting a hole in up. Somewhere I'm told that the word Zamzam comes from older Arabic, which means stop flowing, because it's a natural spring, and the water just keeps coming. But see how I've wandered. So here we have this really ancient building, and probably the reason it's there is because of Zamzam, this natural spring, which used to be the original spring, and underground it still is, 66 feet to the east, and even the corner of the Kaaba points at, there it is. So perhaps the purpose of building this big structure in the middle of nowhere, and it really is in the middle of nowhere, not in any particular trade route, but in an area where there isn't any water. It would be good to know where there was water. So it may have been there as a marker and a refuge, and historically that seems to be the idea, that it was known for centuries to be an area of refuge where people didn't fight each other because there was a source of water there, and the Kaaba, the purpose of it all along, was known as the house of God, and this is traditional, and there seems to be some evidence for it, various religions could leave their idols at the Kaaba and not have to truck them around with them as they were traveling hither and there, and they could do their worshipping at the Kaaba. So everybody, no matter, pagans were very open to do your thing. Whatever your thing is, have fun. Don't bug us. That was my impression of paganism, is do your own thing. And I'm sure that pagans will say, that's not the way it goes. But anyhow, the point of it all is that that thing that's there, the cube, has been there a really, really, really long time. Perhaps as long as something has been there to the time of Abraham, which would be 4,000 years ago. And this still hasn't really anything to do with the mathematics that is going to get really interesting if I haven't gone on like forever, 14 minutes. I'll wrap it up within half an hour, I hope. If you're here, this is interesting. I hope it's interesting. So, it's a cube. And before I get on to the mathematics of a cube, and you don't have to know any mathematics, I'm just going to explain it all to you. The Holy of Holies in the Jewish religion, which is the inner sanctum of the temple where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. It tells you in the Bible that it was 20 cubits by 20 cubits by 20 cubits. Now I'm not sure, I haven't gone back and checked the measurements of the tent of meeting, which was kind of a take-apart yurt kind of, you know, you could take this structure apart. Moses told them how to build the pieces and how they would all fit together, so you could put the waterproof part over, you could put the decorative claws over, and then the waterproof skins over top of that for the tent of meeting. But it had a Holy of Holies too, and I don't know if it was a cube or not, but certainly in the Bible the Holy of Holies was 20 cubits by 20 cubits by 20 cubits, which is 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet, which is pretty much the same as the interior of the Kaaba, 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet. Now remember, the Kaaba was really old, and trying to build a big mother of a building out in the middle of nowhere out of 1 meter pieces of granite and then line it with marble and build a flat roof that was roughly 30 feet square. That's no mean feat, even in the 3rd to the 6th centuries, when a lot of historians think maybe that's when the original stone structure was built. Nobody really knows, but that's when the area began to be settled. It was no longer just an oasis. People actually started living in the area around the Kaaba. So at that time there might have been reason for somebody somewhere to build this massive stone structure in the middle of nowhere for no other reason except it was beside a natural source of water in the middle of the desert. Not a desert, but even in that part of it, Arabia, you know, that's a pretty dry area. You don't get much water, not much rain at all. Where am I going with this? Cubes. The Holy of Holies in the first and second temples were cubes. The Kaaba, which is still there, was a cube. Have I covered that? Oh, well, I'll talk about the word Kaaba. So it was always known as the house of God, and it was by the oasis Zamzam. And in most traditions, especially from ancient Egyptian ones, the word Ka is associated with the spirit or the soul or the carrier of the soul. Sorry, it's your soul, and the Ba is the body or the container of the bottle. The bottle, see? Ba, bottle. Maybe it has nothing to do with the sounds being the same, but it sure is a nice coincidence. So the Kaaba, or the Ba, if you read from right to left, which is the way Arabic actually goes, it would be the house of the spirit. And most of the spiritualist type people believe there's another word, M-E-R, which is Merkaba. And we're going to get to Merkaba and what that's about. So here's the thing with a cube. A cube is a cube is a cube. Oh, the Kaaba, how do they support that big flat roof? I just found out recently, because you can go on Google Earth now, and they allowed the Google camera inside, so you can have a look inside the Kaaba and see what it looks like, and look around. There are 3 vertical teak pillars down the center of one of the lines to help support that big flat roof. I always wondered how on earth could they build, and it's teak. Everything's made of teak, and the roof is several layers, and there's a hatch so you can get up on the actual roof. But that was quite a feat of engineering not long ago out in the middle of nowhere. And why? So here's the thing with a cube, because I'll just go on forever if you let me. If you take a cube and you draw an X from corner to corner on every surface, imagine that, you got a cube, and you draw an X on every surface, what you will have inside and what you will have outlined is a thing called the Merkaba Star. So I'm going to, where's my computer? Where are we? Let's go in here a little bit more that way. You must be over there. So there you go. There's your Merkaba Star. You have outlined with those X's the shape of the Merkaba Star. And it's a kind of three-dimensional Star of David. Can you catch that? Am I too close to the mic? Probably. There you are, over there somewhere. So inside every cube there is a Merkaba Star, and what it is the intersection of two, where are you? What am I doing? There you are. Two tetrahedrons. And what's inside that? If you were to lop off the corners of that star, what's inside of that is a shape called the octahedron. So this is the Merkaba Star, which this octahedron is also inside the cube. And in this case, we're looking at the pointy part here is where the center of the X's are. But that's what's inside the cube. And these pointy parts are the dead center of each surface of the cube. And you'll notice it looks very much like an Egyptian pyramid. Gee, how about that, eh? Isn't that interesting? It's built sort of like the Egyptian pyramid. Coincidence? Who knows? So inside every cube is this Archimedean solid called the octahedron. And it has 8 sides. Remember that it's an octahedron and it's inside the cube, which also becomes the Merkaba Star, which in this case Mer is meant to be light or rotating light, spirit, and body. This shape, the Merkaba Star, was known to all kinds of people. Leonardo da Vinci thought it was really interesting, and he really studied it. Mathematically, it is really interesting. But the octahedron, if you start chopping it up, if you were to chop off every corner, enough of each of every corner so that the pile of corners was the same volume of what's left over, you would have, gee, I'm going to forget the word now. Octahedron. It's an octahedron, not an augmented one. Isn't that bright? My old brain is stalled on me. You would end up a shape which is possible to tile the universe. You cannot tile the universe with this shape. You cannot tile the universe with a regular tetrahedron. The Greeks thought you could, but they were wrong. You can only tile about 97%. You'll still have about roughly a little less than 3% space left over, and you can't fit. It just doesn't work. You can tile the universe with right-angle tetrahedrons, and this structure here, I should be watching the computer screen there. This structure here is composed of 8 right-angle tetrahedrons. If you draw a line right down through the center of this sucker in a flat plane, you can see a whole bunch of right-angle tetrahedrons in here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I get that right? Where's the 16? Did I do my count right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Sorry, 8 on 8. There's 8 right-angle tetrahedrons. I'm not going to start recounting now. I should have memorized all this. I thought I did. Smoked too much pot. I got to move on because I'm up to 24 minutes already. Jeez, how do I do it? So inside the cube, the Kaaba, the Holy of Holies of the first and second temple, you have the Merkaba Star, and inside the Merkaba Star you have an octahedron which is composed of, okay, I got it right, 8 right-angle tetrahedrons. If I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Comments are good. I don't like being wrong. So the interesting thing about Merkaba Star and all that is there is an octahedron at the center. And it turns out there's another octahedron in the world of mathematics, and this is it. This shape is called the GyroBiFastigium. It is Johnson solid number 26, the GyroBiFastigium, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles and 1, 2, 3, 4 squares, and they all have sides exactly the same length. And it's like a pup tent where you rotate at 90 degrees, and there you got yourself the GyroBiFastigium. And it's a really interesting octahedron, which it is, because it's also a Johnson solid. And a couple other things we can get to. Something just slipped my mind, but it'll come back to me. I was supposed to tell you. Can't remember what. Maybe it was important, probably. Who knows? So the pattern for this sucker, let me get to that in case I forget to do it, is here. A little bit up, a bit more. And you can see all you need to do is get 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles and 4 squares and arrange them in the shape of a rocket ship or a man shape, and then you play around with it a bit and you'll figure out how to fold it up. It may take you a couple tries to figure out what the hell is he talking about. I can't do this. You just got to figure out how to make the folds go the right way. There's another pattern, but this, which is mathematically more appropriate, but this is the easy one to remember. If you can remember the rocket ship, and you can remember how to make this sucker. So remember, this is an octahedron, and what's really interesting about this particular octahedron is you can tile the universe with this thing. If you had enough of these, you could put them side by each and there will be no space left over. There are very few shapes that can do that. The cube is one, and tetrahedrons don't work unless they're right angle tetrahedrons. And Johnson Solid J26 can do it. What's also really interesting about this is if you stellate it, you will get yourself a shape like this. Where are you? There you are. You see that? And what this shape is, I call it the WormWood Star. Maybe I'll make a video about how to... My model's been around for about 10 years, kind of beat up now. I can tell you quickly how to make the model. You have to take, can you see down here? I think I made a drawing, didn't I? Did I not make a drawing? Idiot, I probably did, but I don't know where I put it. But what's important to know is you're going to make 3 triangles, or you're going to make 2 triangles. So you're going to need, with the model, you're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces to put together. And from here to here is a unit of 8. And the hole through the center, which this triangle is going to go through, is 2 units. Oops, you're down there. Idiot. You're not watching what you're doing, David. That's not very good. Anyhow, the ratio from one end to the other of the paper model of all the pieces you're going to make is going to be 8 units. It's going to be 2 units wide and 2 units from the end. You're going to make the slope, and when you fold it over that slope, oops, 3 units over. Oh, I did this wrong, sorry. 1, 2, 3, it's 3 units over. David goofed, 3 units over. I can tell because I can look at my model, and you can find this model online if you search for my book, The Shape of God, because I show you how to make it in there. I wrote a book which I did the manuscript for, and you can still download a zip copy of it, The Shape of God, and the pattern is in there. But the thing of it is that in this shape is also inside a cube. It's very much harder for me to show you where it is because you can see how much it distorts reality. And the other interesting thing, because I'm going to shut up momentarily, I think I've told you the main things I meant to tell you. is in chemistry, many chemical bonds line themselves up around this particular shape. And if you're a chemist, you can check this out, what I'm talking about. Like there may be a bond there, but they're following exactly as you chemists do. I'm not a chemist, I'm a physicist, but that's what I'm told. I'm told that in the world of chemistry there's many molecules where the atoms line themselves up, not so much in a complete shape, some do, but using parts of the shape of the GyroBiFastigium, which tells me in the world of physics this is a really important shape. And the whole point of all this video, and I didn't do it the way I thought I was going to do it, was to tell you that inside every cube, if you draw an X on every surface, you will have outlined that shape, which is the three-dimensional Star of David, the Seal of Solomon, and oh, this shape is also in mathematics. This star, the star shape. Oh, you're over here. That's why I can't figure that out. Get your hands off there, David. Is called the Stella Star Octangula, which is octa comes from 8. I think I really screwed that one up, didn't I? Well, I tried. Did you get anything from this? If you thought it was interesting and worth wasting 32 minutes by the time I stopped this sucker on, tell your friends. Bet you didn't know this. And you can figure out how to make the pattern for this, or if you wish, you can figure out how to make this shape for yourself using a pattern where you make 3 triangles which themselves are triangles. So you got a perfect triangle going through another triangle, and there's no space left over, and the way you do it is the distance from pointy to pointy has to be 8. The distance from here to here has to be 2. So you know the width of your triangle is a unit of 2. The opening is a unit of 2. And if you draw all this out on paper, you can make yourself a pattern. You could make this out of metal or paper, or keep it away from children. It's got pointy things on it. God, I'm an idiot. Retweet me or something. Did I do it for you? 33 minutes coming up. Butch in Vancouver, Terry David Silvercloud. Told you I'm not your average old dude. I ain't your grandfather. Bye.